The power of AI in marketing with our new series, AI Agent. Dive into the world of SaaS tools, discover how marketing pros deploy bots, and explore the best use cases for AI in your marketing strategy. Only on Marketing in the Age of AI podcast with Emmanuel Rose.
Welcome to this episode of Marketing in the Age of AI. Today we get to talk with Mike Allton. He is a leading voice in digital marketing and the head of strategic partnerships at Agorapulse. And he has got a wealth of information and has got a lot of ways that he's leveraging AI and software in general to make his life simpler and to take on more podcasts, I hope, Mike. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I'm not sure I want more podcasts. I already have 5, but I'll take it. I appreciate you.
Wow, you're like a podcast machine.
Yeah. I was counting today. I have 21 interviews scheduled for April alone.
That is big. That's 5. Come up on five a week ish.
Yeah. Basically every day I have 1 or 2 interviews scheduled.
Wow. And how long have you been doing the podcast routine here?
Well, let me think. My first podcast, I had a couple of my own that I started. I think the first one was maybe 2022. And those were all short-lived. I think I did a series of 10 or 12 episodes. It was just me recording, and I was doing all the editing myself, which was absolutely painful. I did not want to do that at all.
Yeah.
And killed that after a while. And then I launched an episode or a show called The Martech Show. It was me and my partner, Robin Diamond. We were doing initially a weekly webinar. Then it transitioned into a weekly live stream and then a little less often. And I turned that into a podcast. But it was Q1 2024 that my CEO came to me and he said, Mike, I know you're a really good interviewer and a good host. We've got 4 ICPs at Agorapulse: agencies, retail, hospitality, and B2B.
Yep.
He said, I think it'd be great if we started a couple new podcasts, first targeting agency and retail, and then eventually the other 2. And you were interviewing our prospects as an ABM play.
Beautiful.
So I had these lists of prospects, same as our sales team.
Yep.
And so I started interviewing agency owners and social media managers in the retail space. So that was Q2 of 2024. I launched those 2, and then pretty soon 2 more. And about that same time, I spun up my own show, the AI Hat podcast.
Yeah, that's a lot of focused attention on people who are not in the same room with you. And I tell you, I'm just doing 2 podcasts, and so that is it's impressive. And I guess you've got to have a lot of help, and B, some personal processes to make things go quicker. And I know we've built some tools inside the agency that help me, which is I take these otter notes from our pre-show, and then it kind of autofills and pulls your LinkedIn profile and creates some questions for me, and it builds a Google Doc. So at least I have that part that I don't have to do research wise. It provides it for me. But what sort of activities do you have that are kind of automated like that?
Well, I'll start with some of the non-AI processes, because this is like pre-show stuff. Because what I have been doing, not only interviewing folks, I was a showrunner for a long-standing series at Agorapulse several years ago. We did over 100 episodes of a weekly show, and I was behind the scenes. I was running. We were using Ecamm and StreamYard as a live stream, but it was somebody else who was on camera. And then I also run all of our virtual events for years, starting before the pandemic. And one of the lessons I learned early in that process was use a form, get all the guest information up front.
Right.
Don't be chasing them. Don't do a whole lot of research on your own if you don't have to, when you can give them a form and ask them for their LinkedIn profile, ask them for their preferred headshot, their bio, and so on.
Yeah.
So that was one of the first things I did with all these shows, starting with the Martech show and then moving on to the other ones. I have a Google form that feeds into a Google Sheet, and that Google Sheet is my second brain for
Yeah.
all these shows. It's got all the guests. It has when I'm going to do the recording, when it's going to air. All their details are in there. Quick reference guide for me if somebody has to cancel or reschedule.
Yep.
Now I'm just moving rows around. At least, my shows are not live. All the ones that I had today. So like I had a guest Thursday or Friday who had to reschedule. They bumped it for a couple weeks from now.
Right.
Okay, that's no problem. That just bumped everybody else up. So I've got that form. And in that form, I also ask 1, 2, maybe 3 questions of the guest. And those questions vary a little bit from show to show. But generally what I'm trying to do is get a sense from them before I even do anything. What do they want to talk about?
Right.
What's really interesting to them? For my AgoraPulse shows, what I'm looking for there are a challenge that they've overcome in their business, because that's what we're going to talk about. We want to talk about that challenge. We want to tell that story. And in order to tell a great story, you have to have the context. Who is it? What challenge were they fighting? What did they try? How did
the hero's journey, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I need that up front.
Yep.
And again, pre-AI, I was collecting all that for the MarTech show. And then I would go and I would look at their LinkedIn. I would look at their responses. I'd create a pre-show document, just like you were talking about, a Google Doc.
Yep.
But I would personally have to figure out still, all right, this is what they want to talk about. What are the questions I want to ask? How am I going to introduce the show? Because I would basically draft a show notes document in advance. In other words, I would draft my introduction. I start the show with the introduction, framing the problem, introduce the guest. I'd create this custom, really hyped up bio that I would read of the guest. And then I'd get into the questions. And I always had the takeaways. But I was doing this myself at first. And so I was spending at least 2 hours for every episode of the MarTech show, thinking this through. And then, of course, again, like I said, my CEO came to me. He wanted to add a bunch of more podcasts. And I'm thinking, how am I going to do
Don't have enough time. Yeah.
I don't have enough time.
Yeah.
And that's when I discovered Dan Sanchez, or Dan Chez, as he likes to be known. I was listening to one of his podcast episodes about AI, and he was talking about a custom GPT he developed called myshowrunner.com.
Nice.
It's at myshowrunner.com. It's Showrunner GPT. And as I listened to it, a couple things stood out to me. One, there were some differences with how I run a show, but the core fact was he was using a custom GPT to help him build out that pre-show document.
Right. So
I went and grabbed it, figured out how it worked, understood it, and started playing with it, started making changes to it. And we can get into the detail of how this actually works for listeners who aren't really familiar with it. But at the end, what I ended up having was a custom set of instructions for AI, so that now I open up a new chat and I can use this with any LLM. I typically use Claude because there's a bit of copywriting in this process.
Yeah.
I open up the LLM and say, hey, I've got a new guest and a new episode to prepare for. Can you give me a hand? Because I'm always super polite to the AI.
Yeah.
And it says, yeah, absolutely.
It's a good secret.
That's a secret, right?
Yeah.
It says, I've programmed it to say, okay, what's the name of the guest? And I say Manuel Rose. And it says, cool. What's their LinkedIn address? And I copy and paste from the Google Sheet into the LLM.
Right.
Here's their LinkedIn. Yeah. And it says, fantastic. Based on their LinkedIn, if it's able to read it, it's not always is, because of profile settings and so on. But if it is, it regurgitates for me. Oh, okay. I see Emmanuel is ... He's done this, that, and the next thing. It gives me a summary of the guest. And that if it doesn't work, I've got their bio in the sheet. I can copy and paste. And then it says, what would you like to talk about? And again, assuming they filled out my form, I already know what they want to talk about. I just copy and paste an answer or two from the Google Sheet in there. I say, hey, Emmanuel wants to talk about this. And it says, cool, based on their LinkedIn and their background and the topic they want to talk about, here are 5 angle suggestions for the show.
Right.
And I pick one. I say number 2. And it says, cool, based on that, here are 10 title ideas for the show. And I pick one. And it says, cool, here's 10 questions you're going to want to ask in order to achieve what you want to achieve, to get that result of telling that story. Here's 3 takeaways that you can expect if you ask these questions. Here's a custom introduction for the show and a custom bio for the guest that you can read. It creates the entire pre-show document for me. Now, obviously, at any step of the way, I can say, let's change this, let's do that.
Right.
But this is now a 15-minute process instead of 2 hours.
Yeah, that's amazing leverage, isn't it? Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
And then, so I'm wondering, have you seen any of these softwares that kind of take video and create and edit after the show? You reviewed any of those yet?
Yeah, I used a script constantly. The good news is for me, I only have to do that for my own personal show, the AI Hat podcast. At Agora Pulse, once I'm done with the interview, I upload that to Google Drive folder. I go into our Asana. We've got a set of Asana tasks for every episode. I click off a bunch of stuff. I copy and paste a bunch of stuff. Basically, just fire off a bunch of tasks.
Yeah.
And then I'm done.
Yeah.
Somebody else handles the rest of it. We've got a team. I've got a VA at Agora Pulse. We've got an external editor, Jeff C. Does a fabulous job. He edits Guy Kawasaki's podcast, and then he edits ours. We've got a content team and a graphics design team and a video team. So I don't have to handle, and a social media manager. So I do nothing with our podcasts after I've interviewed the guest and kicked off the Asana test. But with the AI hat,
yeah,
it's just me. I'm a solopreneur. That's a side hustle for me. So generally speaking, I'm conducting interviews all the time whenever people want, and it's convenient for them. But Saturday mornings are when I do my actual editing. I'll spend typically 2 hours in the script. And most of the time, it's just simply re-listening to the episode.
Yep.
I'll do some light editing to the text. For those listening, if you haven't used a script, it's amazing. You're not really editing the WAV file like you used to do with podcast editors. You're looking at a document and you're seeing a transcript of what was said. And if somebody said, just highlight it and take it out. Yeah. Or better yet, use Descript's automatic AI overlord or underlord. They call it AI underlord feature, where it'll automatically detect what it calls filler words, ahs, likes, so, repetitive words, and so on. And you can pick and choose if you want them all or some of them. But it goes through and removes all of those and identifies the speakers for me. And I'm usually then just listening to the podcast again to help me identify the clips. Descript will identify clips. There's a lot of tools out there that identify clips.
Yep.
I'm not yet sold really on any of them. And I don't know if it's just me, I'm looking for a different angle than what they're suggesting, or if I just don't trust them, or maybe they're just no good. I don't know. But I'm always listening for a couple of 60 to 90 second segments. One of them I'm going to end up bumping to the front of the show and make that a cold open for the podcast. And both of them are going to turn into vertical videos for TikTok, Reels, and so on.
Sure. Wow. You've got such an amazing amount of experience just with the frequency that you're doing the shows. I'm curious, how much are you doing where it's just a monologue versus interview?
I do monologues for my AI Hat podcast occasionally. Lately, I've been honestly just way too busy to actually do one, and I've got several that I want to do. I want to do one on AI agents. I haven't really talked about AI agents specifically yet. Yeah. Most of my guests, we've only touched on it. It hasn't been the purpose of the show, so I kind of feel like I need to do a whole episode there. But I did a whole episode on custom GPTs. Nice. I did a whole episode on creating your voice and getting your voice GPT and getting the AI to sound like you. And then the first 4 episodes for the entire show were solo episodes just to create some additional content right from the start. So I launched with multiple episodes.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. I just have seen some studies very recently, where they're saying there's a little bit of fatigue on the interview style. And that people are looking for monologues, which is, it's a whole different discipline in a lot of ways, right? Creating good monologues.
It is. Yeah. It's extra work in a lot of respects, because not only do you have to think about what you're going to talk about, personally, I would script that out. A lot of people are comfortable just talking on the fly. It just depends on your personality. I'm frankly too much of a perfectionist to just want to wing a 10 to 20 minute talk. Yeah. I would script that out. And that works fine for me, but that's extra time up front. Now, one really fun episode I did, it was a kind of a monologue, was an episode all about Notebook LM.
Yeah, good.
So I started off just a couple of minutes introducing what this was, and then I inserted a 5-minute conversation from Notebook LM
Right.
about itself. I had fed into a notebook everything I could find at the time about Notebook LM, and this is shortly after it really went viral last
Yep.
year. So it's that two people conversation about themselves. It was very meta. It was very cool. And then I came back on and shared my more perspectives and so on. So it was a 10 or 15 minute episode, probably all about Notebook LM. That was fun. I should do more of those.
Yeah, and Notebook has got that interesting podcast feature to it, right? Where it will
Yep.
actually create the voices, and some people have started to create podcast episodes just entirely with Notebook, which not my style, but it's interesting because people want to consume content with their ears, and so I think it's an interesting way to reformat and repurpose content if you don't have a podcast personality, I guess. But
Yeah, because one of the things that I've been doing is I have a Notebook LM. And for those listening, if you're not familiar, this is a product that came out of Google Labs. It's now slowly being integrated into Gemini. And like most retrieval augmented generation systems or RAG systems, you can feed it a bunch of information and it will talk and answer only to those informations. It's not going to scan the web. So I have a notebook that's filled with the, 60, 70 plus podcast episodes that I've recorded for the AI Hat podcast. When I finish the transcript, I download that as a text file and upload that in Notebook LM. So that's the extreme, or I don't want to put it, that is the sum and total of the source material. So when I want to talk to Notebook LM about past episodes, it's not trying to draw from anywhere else. If I want to get a quote from a past guest, it's going to pull from a transcript. And then I can have it do conversations about topics or the whole show overall. Those will probably make for some interesting episodes.
yeah, it's kind of like a hybrid. Because you can add links to other websites now, so that's a nice feature. So it's kind of like a dynamic custom GPT in some ways, right? And then you can build your exclusion lists and all kinds of things. It's a super interesting piece of software. The other one is just the Google AI Studio, which is phenomenal too now. So then you do a lot for the AI Hat. You're doing your own processing. So anything else that you've kind of agentified inside your workflow that you could share as far as processes?
Yeah. So with the AI Hat podcast, I have the one custom instruction set for the pre-show document. And then I have a different custom instruction post-publishing. In other words, promotion.
Yeah.
Right. And again, that's just a process where I've set it up where I want it to have me give it the transcript, the link to the published episode, who the name of the guest or guests. So we're very clear about that. Because in early days, I might ask it for a quote from the guest, and it would pull a quote from me because it didn't understand the difference there. So I just expressly tell it those kinds of information and any specific points that were covered. So, for instance, last weekend, my episode was with Mark Schaefer, who's a big keynote speaker and author in the marketing land. So I fire up the custom instruction, the custom AI. I'm typically using, like I said, Claude or Gemini, ChatGPT. It all works. And it says, cool, give me the transcript, give me the link, give me the guest name. I've just told it to prompt me for those things. And I give it all those. And the first thing it does is it summarizes the episode, pulls out 3 to 5 key takeaways and some key quotes specific from the transcript by the guest. And this is something I had to really stress because, again, if you have unfettered AI, it'll go on to the web and pull a quote. Like I did an interview with Christopher Penn, and then afterwards I was trying to create some documentation for it, and it kept pulling quotes from Chris Penn from YouTube and other places. I'm like, he may have said those things, but he didn't say them to me on my show. And this is what I'm trying to go for here. So that's why I started uploading the text files, a transcript. It made it now a flawless process.
Nice.
And so it looks at that, it gives me that information, and I just check it and I say, yep, looks great. And then it knows to go on to create all the assets that I need to be created for that particular show. for me, the most important asset is a long form LinkedIn post
Yep.
where I'm going to really describe what this episode was about. I'm going to weave in quotes from the guest. I'm going to paint the picture there. I'm going to attach one of the video snippets that I created. I'm obviously going to tag the guest and their company.
Yep.
One of the things that I'm noting in that 2-hour edit process, why I'm re-listening to the podcast, I'm marking down in my show notes every single person, past episode, brand, anybody that was mentioned on that episode. Sometimes there aren't any. Sometimes there are a lot. Like I've already talked about Mark Schaefer and Chris Penn in this episode. So if I was doing this episode, I would make sure that they were tagged in the LinkedIn post, or typically the first comment. So I note those in advance. So I've got them. So then it goes on to give me 3 or 4 options for captions for the short form video, because I'm going to share that to Instagram Reels and TikTok, and I just need like a paragraph. And then it's going to give me 5 or 6 tweets that I can schedule out using Agorapulse over the next week. So I'm constantly reminding my audience, hey, Mark was on my show. He talked about this. And then this is where it gets really cool for me. The next thing it does is it drafts my entire email newsletter.
Nice.
I've got a subscriber list of over 40,000 subscribers I've built up over years. And I want them to know about this episode and why they should listen to it. And it understands who my audience is. It understands the perspective that I want it to take with this. Oftentimes it's mirroring what we talked about in the LinkedIn post. It's going to be very similar. And so it gives me that, including a subject line, pre-header text, and the full content of the newsletter, which again, I can massage however I want to. I can go back and forth with it if I didn't like the angle or whatever. And then the last part is the really cool part. The last part is I have a LinkedIn newsletter. For those listening who haven't explored this, LinkedIn has a newsletter function that you can do for free. And as soon as you create your newsletter, LinkedIn's going to start suggesting it to people who are following you and people who aren't following you.
Nice.
And you're going to start to get subscribers to that newsletter. The only requirement is you do have to publish the first episode. So as long as you get a first episode out there, it'll start building your subscriber base. My LinkedIn newsletter is actually my AI chief of staff's newsletter. His name is Clue. And this is his take on that episode. And I've told him, and I haven't told him like what to say. I've simply given him the broad, paint strokes that says, hey, this is your newsletter. It's your perception as an AI about what the guest said. And I gave it a lot of creative license, and it decided to put in these things he calls system prompts, which are basically just like almost asides from a verbal perspective. And he'll quote the guest, and he'll do all that. He'll decide if he wants an image in the body of the newsletter, where he wants it, and what he wants it to be, and then he'll create that image.
Wow.
So if you look at my newsletters, it's always the podcast art at the top, but in the body of the newsletter, there's usually an image, and that was created and just drummed up by the AI assistant. So that's all him. I don't edit it. I just copy and paste and make sure the formatting looks right. And then I show that to my LinkedIn. So Saturdays, the podcast publishes. On Sundays, the newsletter goes out. And on Monday, the LinkedIn newsletter goes out. And Clue, my AI chief of staff, has like 2,500 subscribers to his LinkedIn newsletter. So it's no joke. I mean, there's a lot of people
That's some reach.
seeing this.
Yeah.
That's some reach. And I'm able to do all that, again, just in a matter of like 30 minutes on a Saturday afternoon after I've done with the editing and publishing of the podcast.
Yeah. Wow. That is some cool leverage. And is that what the AI hat is? Explain to me a little bit about what the AI hat is.
Yeah, so the AI hat, I spun that off over the holidays, 2024. So I started the podcast in the middle of 2024. I launched it in May.
Yeah.
So we're approaching a year. And initially it was AI in marketing unpacked. And my focus was AI in marketing. And I was publishing it under my umbrella site of the Social Media Hat, which is the site that I've had for over a decade. And after 50 episodes, plus a bunch of other articles about AI, I wasn't getting the traction that I wanted to see and expected to see as a longtime blogger and SEO expert. And it dawned on me, the site's about social media and digital marketing with 1,000 articles on social media, email, and so on. And now you're talking about this new thing that's technically not social media marketing. It was AI in marketing, but it was mostly AI and so on. And I also realized, again, over the holidays, because what happened was my family and I drove to California from St. Louis to visit family and then drove back, which is a 25 plus hour one-way drive. So I had a lot of time to think on this drive, this holiday. I spent a lot of time talking with my AI chief of staff, which I was using Gemini at this point for that.
Right.
Strategizing. I mean, first I just turned to it and said, hey, I did this. I published all this content to the socialmediahat.com. Was that dumb? Was that a mistake? He didn't say it was dumb. They won't ever be that mean to you. But he did agree with my supposition that, yeah, I probably should be looking at pushing that to a completely different site. So we figured that out. And we figured out in the process, I don't want to talk to marketers. Nothing against marketers. I love marketers. I'm a marketer. But who I really want to help are business owners,
Right.
like small business owners, particularly here in St. Louis where I'm at. They're the ones I see struggling the most with AI. Marketers, we're generally speaking used to learning new technology.
For sure. Yep.
We're used to seeing brand new social networks, Clubhouse, Blue Sky, whatever. Okay, I'll figure it out if I have to, and we do. Small business owners, they don't have time for that. But they're the ones that can largely benefit the most because they can impact their entire organization with an AI implementation. So spun off the AI hat just after Christmas 2024. And by January, I completely rebanded the podcast, turned it into AI for Business Leaders, the AI Hat podcast. I'm still talking about marketing a lot. I still have episodes I recorded in November that are still being published now. But the focus of the show really is business. So now we talk about a lot more than just marketing. And then also now through the AI hat, I do training. I'll do 3-hour workshops or 2-day AI boot camps. I've got a course on how to create your own AI assistant, like my AI chief of staff, that not only is a resource, like intelligently, who knows a lot about your sphere of interest, but it knows, you train it on what are your goals? What's your organization? Do you have a team? Who do you report to? That kind of information, because it's kind of nice to know that. What are your challenges? What are you trying to accomplish this year? So like at Agorapulse, I'm having the whole Agorapulse team, I'm suggesting everybody create their own AI work buddy, no matter what your role is.
For sure.
So that you've got somebody that you can turn to night or day, whatever question you have, whether it's a factual question or heck, maybe you just want to vent about whatever situation there is. And like a real life work buddy who was sitting next to you in a cubicle, they're going to understand what you're talking about without you having to give a lot of context. The guy next to you knows who you report to. He knows that you have these challenges getting this department to work with you on a regular basis because you've told him. So that's what I love doing with the AI hat.
Love it. Yeah. So I love this concept of we build these special purpose GPTs and train them to be our help, and even a team of them, right? Where you have a business consultant, a business coach, maybe you have an HR support. And so you're able to have better results than you would on your own. So I love it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that you're working with small business, because I agree. As marketing people, that's what we do. We adopt new stuff constantly. Business owners are adopting their specialty, whatever that is, immediately, and not the marketing part, which is still hilarious to me that people think they can do their own marketing. Any small business owner, like, what, you doing your own accounting? It's so complicated now. 40 years ago when I got started, it was way simpler than it is now, and it is not something that people should be trying on their own.
No.
Try it something
like you said, it changes, and so we're used to it. Instagram changes the algorithm, they move a button, whatever. We complain about it, but at our core, marketers, you know what, we're used to it. Like, okay, fine, we'll figure it out. We'll relearn how to publish something. Or even more extreme things like, TikTok's about to be banned for like the 4th or 5th time this weekend. Will it really be banned? I don't know. Probably not. If it is get banned, okay. Well, we'll figure that out too, because that's just what we're used to.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate your time and your wealth of knowledge. I love talking to you, and I appreciate you dishing for me and us today. People want to get in touch with you. How do they do that?
Well, first of all, thank you. This has been a real pleasure. I hope folks listening or watching have picked something up. By all means, if you've got questions about anything that I said, you want more detail, I'm happy to share. If you want to connect with me, just go to the aihat.com/connect. And that's where you can find any of my social profiles. I'm on all of them because I've been doing this forever. So if you want to connect with me on Blue Sky or X or Facebook, whatever your preference is, you'll find it there.
All right. Well, Mike, hang on for me while I close this out and say goodbye properly. Thank you.
You bet.
Well, there you have some good tips from Mike Allton about implementing some kind of partition spaces where you can aggregate both information that's important to you and let the AI get used to how you speak and how you'd like to get your information delivered back to you. So hope this has been a good use of your time today. And I hope that you find an AI tool, spend some time with it, save some time, no matter what the activity is that you're doing, and then use that time to go for a walk outside or spend some time with your friends or family. Till next time, this is Emmanuel Rose.
Thanks for listening to Marketing in the Age of AI. Be sure to subscribe wherever you heard this podcast so you never miss a future episode. Your copy of Authentic Marketing in the Age of AI is available at Amazon.com or EmmanuelRose.com. You can also connect with Emmanuel on LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.